later on. Okay, so I think that's done the housekeeping. If we can move on to the next slide, Holly, please. So I just wanted to briefly review some of the key issues related to the transition from the QA Hub to the QA Link that we presented on the 15th of July webinar. So the QA Hub is still live, and all activity up to the 13th of August should continue on the QA Hub. So if you're engaged in a QA activity at the moment, then you should continue as per usual process on the QA Hub. That's up to the 13th of August, and we will send a further communication to provide you with exact times of when the QA Hub is going to be shut off. Because there will be an interim period then when there won't be any access for anything between the 13th or between the 14th and the 17th of August. And that's when the final transition of all of the information in the hub is going to be transferred across to the QA Link. Much of that information has already been transferred. These are the final elements and the final checks that are going to happen in that interim period over that weekend. Then all work will be undertaken on the QA Link as of the 17th of August. So Monday the 17th is going to be the day that the link is going to be live, and that all activity is going to be undertaken from the QA Link from that date. What you will receive is an email as a visitor to be able to register and create your profile on the QA Link, and that's going to be the first process that we're going to run through today and show you. That fourth bullet point is obviously about the sessions that we did last week and then today. And just to confirm as well, whilst obviously the system is changing from the hub to the QA Link, all other communication that you normally receive from the operations team at Mott MacDonald, so that's related to your availability, related to scheduling of events, that will continue as it currently does. So you will still receive communication from the Mott MacDonald team outside of the QA Link. But we'll go into that in a little bit more detail later on during this webinar. So if we could move to the next slide, please. Okay, so what can you as a visitor do within the QA Link? So this essentially forms an agenda for what we're going to run through at this webinar. So you will be able to create your own profile, including your contact details, which you'll be able to then keep up to date, which obviously is important that we're able to contact you if you change your mobile number, or you move institutions and you have a new email, you'll be able to update your contact information within your profile in the QA Link, and we're going to show you how to do that. You're going to be able to review request details that you've been assigned to, and we're going to show you a link in just a second on terminology, because some of the terminology has changed. And so a request essentially is talking about an event request or a modification request. So you'll be able to view the details of the request that you've been assigned to. You'll be able to accept a visit. So whilst the scheduling process is going to happen out of the link, you will be able to accept a visit through the link. And again, that's a process we'll demonstrate. You'll obviously be able to review all of the gateway information for any visits that you are assigned to. The gateway process is not changing. There are still gateways 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is the visit. So you'll be able to look at all of the information in the link. You'll be able to download report templates. So you may have previously heard, if you've been on one of the other webinars or maybe on the AEI webinar, that all of the report templates, so the ID part and the F part, are Word versions within the QA Link, rather than doing the reports online as previously has been done in the hub. So we are just finalising the final set of report templates. And actually, whilst, and I know Holly will repeat this later, but whilst there is a section of the QA Link where you're able to download the report templates, they are not the most up-to-date version. What we're going to do to make it easier for yourselves as visitors, because I'm sure many of you regularly visit the Mott MacDonald web pages, is that we'll have a section for QA Link on the web pages, and all of the most up-to-date report templates will be available on the Mott MacDonald web pages. So obviously we'll let you know as soon as they're available. We're going to show you the process about completing the initial draft program approval report and also the final program approval report. They're two key processes that we will talk to you and show you how to do, because they're actually being done offline. because what we want is, and what needs to happen in the QA link is only the final version of the IDPA and the final version of the program approval report needs to be uploaded to make it accessible through the system. So Holly will take us through a flowchart that demonstrates the process for how those two elements are going to work. And then finally, we'll also look at updating a report once an AEI has provided a response to conditions and any conditions evidence in relation to that. So those are the processes that we're going to look through. So as you can see, that's an end-to-end process. So if we could just move on to, I believe, the last slide before I hand over to Holly. So as I mentioned already, there is some terminology changes in the new system. Some of them are more quite subtle, whereas others are more significant. So we just wanted to run through these now briefly before we actually look at the videos, just so that you're aware of what it is that, that some of the terminology that's being used. So you'll have heard me use the term request already. That's going to refer to whether it's an event request as an approval request or a modification event request. So they're just termed as requests within the new system. You might have heard of us previously refer to ERFs and MERFs, event request forms, and modification event request forms. So that's essentially what we're talking about when we talk about requests. There is a QA reference number assigned to every single request. In the hub, that's a 4-digit number. In the link, it's a 12-digit number. So where you see that QA reference, that is a bespoke reference number that's assigned to that particular request. And that's known as so where it says QA reference, that's what we would previously have called the event ID. The system will talk about appointments. When it refers to an appointment, that is the confirmed date of the visit, once the date that's all been scheduled between the visitors and the AEI. Because the NMC have set up the QA link system to enable both education institutions who are seeking AEI status, but also existing approved education institutions to request program approvals or major modifications. Throughout the link, the term that's used is just education institution. So that where you see education institution used, that's referring to either an EI or an AEI, but it will be made clear there's a checkbox that in the request that ticks off to confirm that an education institution for a visit that you're assigned to is actually already an approved education institution. And obviously you'll know from the initial scheduling, etc., that whether you would be undertaking a visit that's actually looking at AEI status for an education institution. But just so that you know, anywhere it mentions education institution, that could be an EI, but it could also be an AEI. It's just a single term that's being used. The next two are important. Obviously, the NMC program title is the title that the NMC register students who complete successfully programs to, whereas the AEI program title is referring to the bespoke title that the AEI will call their particular program. So we've put a couple of examples there, just so that you're aware of what's being referred to in some of the views of the link. One of the things that we're going to show you is how to download a list of practice learning partners and employer partners if it's an apprenticeship. We're going to show you how to download or where you would be able to download that list within the link. When you download that list, it produces an Excel spreadsheet that lists all of the PLPs or employer partners that have been selected by the AEI for approval in relation to that particular program at Gateway 3. The first column on that Excel spreadsheet is called the account name. And in the link, what that is referring to is the practice learning partner. So where it says account name, what it's referring to is the name of the practice learning partner. So we've put the Mid Yorkshire NHS Trust in there, but it could be any service name that is a practice learning partner, and that's referred to as account name. There's a section in the link that talks about ad hoc document requests. That is what it says on the tin. It is for ad hoc document requests. All documentation that's provided as evidence in support of whether the program meets the standards and requirements is included in each of the gateways. So the ad hoc document requests will only be used for things like asking the AEI to upload the agenda for the event, asking them to upload the minutes of the event, obviously post-event, but also to upload any conditions evidence. So that's where the evidence in relation to conditions, if there are any applied at the event, that the AEI will upload them through the ad hoc document request, and that's where you as a visitor will be able to therefore access those in order to update the report. Holly will show you this later on, but just to be clear that in order for the, it's not an open system where the AEI can just upload documents as and when they like. The request for them has to be initiated by you as the visitors for them to be able to populate anything in that ad hoc document request. So we'll show you that when we look at conditions evidence. And finally, anywhere that you see service provider within the QA link, that is referring to us as the QA partner for the NMC. So if it says service provider in terms of passing anything, reports to the service provider, etc., it's referring to those coming to Mott MacDonald. So just so that you're aware that that's how we're referred to within the new system. So I'm going to hand over to Holly now, who's going to take us through a series of videos, and then I will come in as and when necessary, or certainly at the end when we get to the question and answer section. Okay, thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Ian. So yes, I'm going to take you through some videos which explain how the QA link works, and where appropriate, these are going to be accompanied by some flow diagrams or sort of supporting sort of context and wording. So the first one we're going to go through is about creating your profile and maintaining up-to-date contact information. So I'm going to play a short video now, and then I'll discuss it afterwards.
Registering your account and profile. At the beginning, member of the team will register your account on the QA link. Once they've done that, you'll actually receive an email which will look very similar to this. Once you receive the email, you need to go to the link here that's been hyperlinked. If you click through it, it will direct you to the webpage.
Sorry, Holly, I'm not sure if anyone else is getting this, but that's really quiet. Are you able to turn your sound up?
Your code has already been pre-populated. With all this done, all you need to do at this stage is click register.
Is that any better?
This will now take you to a further page. It will note at the top that your invitation has been redeemed. And you just need to populate the next stages of your username.
Are you able to get that any louder, Holly, and then start the video again, because it's really quite quiet.
Maybe that'll help.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll try that again.
Registering your account and profile. At the beginning,
that's not made it much louder.
It's as loud as my computer goes. I'm just trying to think. I'm not sure I can make it any louder, I'm afraid. Just see if that's made a difference.
Registering your account and profile. At the beginning, member of the team will
register. No, that's not made it any louder. It's still, it was louder than that when we used it last week. Apologies, everybody.
I'm afraid all my speakers are as loud as they come. Let me just.
There's audio settings in Zoom as well, so you could try those. If you click on the little arrow next to your, where you've got stop video at the bottom, and that'll bring up some menus. You've got audio in there, so make sure your speaker in there is turned right up. Sorry, everyone.
I think I've got everything as loud as it goes. Let's see if, is that still really quiet?
I can't hear it at all now. Can you, Ian?
No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Um,
Try and reshare your screen and re-click the, you know, you've got the setting for video, and make sure the audio settings are on. Try and reshare your screen and re-click that tick box.
okay, yeah.
Apologies, you'll have to look at each other for a second while we while we sort our audio settings out.
Okay, yeah, I think this might do it. Let's give it a go.
Registering your account and profile.
Right, there we go.
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the beginning, a member of the team will register an account on the QA link. Once they've done that, you'll actually receive an email which would look very similar to this. Once you receive this email, you need to go to the link here that's been hyperlinked. If you click through it, it will direct you to the QA link webpage. On this page, you'll see it's automatically gone to the redeem invitation section, and your code has already been pre-populated. With all this done, all you need to do at this stage is click register. This will now take you to a further page. It will note at the top that your invitation has been redeemed. And you just need to populate the next stages of your username and password. These can be whatever you'd like them to be. Just make sure that they're memorable and you do not share them with anyone else. Once you've populated these sections, you just go on and click register. Okay, now you've successfully registered, it will take you to the NMC QA link homepage, and the next step is for you to update your profile. Now to do this, you go to the top right of the page and click on profile. This will now take you to your profile page where you have 4 sections to complete. To note, I am logged in as a lay visitor. If you are a registrant visitor, you'd get the same pages as what I'm showing on my screen now. However, you would get additional pages. These pages would be around updating for your qualifications that are recorded on the NMC register and for any non-recordable qualifications. So again, you'd get the same pages as the lay visitor that I'm showing on my screen, but you just get the additional few pages you need to populate as well. So as you can see, my screen is currently pre-populated. This is the information that the team have already put in. This is editable, and I'll show you at the end, once we've completed the profile, how I can go back and edit my information. So I'm happy with what's been populated here, so I'm just going to click next. The next page is conflicts of interest. So at this stage, we'd ask for you to declare any conflicts of interest that you may have of where you've worked, where you've taught, or where you've acted as an external examiner. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to put test comments, but you please do populate with the most up-to-date information. And again, if this does change, you can edit it at a later stage. Once you're happy, just move on to next. Now this following page is for you to update with any unavailable dates. Now the scheduling process is done offline by the Mott MacDonald team, and they will contact you via email to get your availability for upcoming QA visits. So at this stage, you don't need to populate it, however you can if you should wish. Otherwise, you can just leave it blank and click next. The final page is just the submission page. If you want to go back, you just click the previous tab. Otherwise, you can just click next and submit. So now I've submitted, I've gone back to the NMC QA link homepage. I mentioned earlier about editing my profile. Now it is your responsibility as the QA visitor to make sure we've got the most up-to-date information on your profile so that we can contact you to schedule visits. So if anything should change, just log onto your account, go to the top left where it says profile, and it will open up your profile again with text boxes around the sections that you can change. So I can change my email address, phone number, I can click in to change my last name if needed. If my number changed, I can also click in and change that. If my conflict of interest changes, again, you just need to click into the box, remove it, and enter in the most recent information. And once you're happy, you just click Update Profile. And rather than taking you back to the home page, it will leave you here on your profile. But if you wish to go back to that home page, you just click the home symbol at the top.
Okay, so just to reiterate there that the conflicts of interest and the scheduling process will still take place offline. So you'll be asked to confirm those off the QA link as well. When registering on the QA link, you must complete your profile setup. Otherwise, the registration hasn't been fully completed. So if you don't do that, you won't be able to be allocated to any visits, and even visits that you are currently allocated to, you won't be allocated on the QA link until you've gone through that full process of setting up your profile. So to reiterate what Ian said, you will receive an email on the 17th of August to register. So it'll be that email that we first saw at the beginning of this video. If you can't find that, do check your junk mail. And if you're still unable to find that invite, you'll need to contact the NMC for support, and we'll share those details of the NMC's help desk closer to the time of the transition. Okay. So the next video is about viewing the request details that you've been assigned to. So this is going to take you through essentially an event request, and it'll show you the details that are within.
How do I view request details that I've been assigned to? When you've logged onto the QA link, the requests page can be accessed by clicking on the requests heading on the menu ribbon at the top of the page. When you've accessed this page, you will see a summary table for all of the requests that you've been assigned to. This table details QA reference numbers down the left-hand side and key information headings across the top. It should be noted here that the information relating to each request is contained within one complete row. To select an individual request for more information, you can either use the selection drop-down at the right-hand side of the screen, or select directly on the QA reference number. On selection, you will see that the landing page has all of the relevant information for that particular request, including information on assigned visitors, programs, appointments, gateway evidence, and program approval reports. To navigate back to the Requests Overview page, you can simply scroll to the top of the page and select the Requests heading on the menu bar.
Okay, so that's the request page, and it's a bit like the home page for each visit. Everything kind of happens on there, and you'll see that once we've sort of go through some more of the videos in relation to the gateways and the program approval reports. Just to clarify, with the QA reference, you can see it is quite a long number, as Ian previously stated. For those requests that are being transferred across from the QA hub to the QA link, the 4-digit number will be retained, and so you'll just see the short number associated with the visit as it is now. But for all new requests, it will be the 12-digit number. Okay, the next video is about accepting a visit. So I'll play that for you.
Accepting appointments. The scheduling of visits will be done offline through the Mott MacDonald team, so any collating of availability, conflict of interest, that'll all be done offline. However, once these scheduled activities have been taking place, you'll receive an appointment invitation through the QA link. Now, to see any appointment invitations that you've received, you need to log onto the QA link. And at the top of the ribbon, you do have an appointments section. So if you click through on appointments, it'll take you through to the appointments page. And as I've said, any appointments you've been allocated to would show up here. Bit on the page, so you'll have the details of the visit, the type of visit, if it's a site visit, if it's desktop modification, and so on. It'll also tell you the visit dates, and it will continue on to the last section, which tells you if you've confirmed to attend the visit itself. So this column here, confirm appointment date. I've got one that's blank, which means I haven't accepted the appointment yet. And I've got one which says yes. This one means I have accepted it. So if I go through to the one which I haven't accepted yet, I can do this either by clicking on the arrow at the end and going through appointment, or clicking on the subject information under the subject header. Once you've selected the appointment, it will take you through the appointment information. It's a pop-up box and it expands down into the education institution, the type of visit is going to be approval modification, if it's going to be a site, desktop. The information goes on, including when the visit will start and end. At the very end of the page, it will ask you to confirm whether you will or will not attend this appointment. We would expect on most cases for yes to be selected at this stage in time. As I've mentioned, the scheduled activity does take place offline, so you should be very much aware of the visit itself by the time you get your appointment invitation. So at this stage we would expect yes. If however it is a no, do contact Mott MacDonald and make them aware before selecting no on the appointment. For this video I'm just going to select yes and click submit. So once I've submitted, it then takes me back to my appointments page. But as you can see, the column where it says to confirm appointment date is now gone from blank to a yes. And that is it to accepting appointments.
Okay, so when you are assigned to an appointment, you will receive an automated email from the QA link. So you won't just be expected to keep an eye on the appointments page in the QA link. You will be notified. And just to reiterate that all scheduling activity will still take place offline in the current way that it is done. So you should never really select no at this stage unless you've sort of discussed that with the Mott MacDonald team and let them know sort of why. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the gateway review process. So once you've been assigned to a request, you'll be able to review and action the gateways. If gateway 1 and 2 have previously been approved, then they'll not need actioning, by which I mean approving or returning to the education institution for more information. However, if these gateways have been updated following previous approval, then the specific requirements amended will need to be reviewed and actioned. And the same process applies for whether the gateway has been approved for the first time or whether there are only select requirements that need to be reviewed. So the approval of the gateways happens in a linear way, whereby before gateway 2 can be approved, gateway 1 has to be approved. And likewise at gateway 3, before you can proceed to the visit, both gateway 1 and 2 have to be approved as well. So for example, if you're reviewing gateway 1 here and you decide that more information is required, you won't be able to move on to gateway 2 until gateway 1's come back and it's been approved. And the exact same for gateway 2 as well and gateway 3. Now, there is one significant difference in the QA link, and that is around the terminology here, in that you've got approve, which still means the gateway is approved. However, if you're rejecting a gateway, you're not just rejecting a gateway, you're rejecting the visit, and it essentially cancels the visit and it will not proceed. So it essentially means you can make that do not proceed decision at any of the gateways. So if you are returning a gateway for more information, you need to change the status to more information required. So on the next page, we've got a video which goes through the Gateway 3 review process, and you'll see that you can either proceed to the visit or more information required, proceed to visit. Either of those options proceeds to the visit, and then when you select proceed to visit, it's the IDPAR will still be used to request further information prior to the visit. So although there is the option here where it says more information required, and you will be able to add comments to the requirements, that sort of functionality shouldn't be used, and it should still be the IDPAR that is used. The review of the gateway should still be done via exception. However, each requirement does have a status that has to be changed. So for Gateway 1 and 2, you must select from a drop-down on each requirement whether it is approved or more information required. But the comments around that are, they're not mandatory fields. So even though each requirement is actioned, it is still only by exception. So I'm going to show you a short video now. To review Gateway evidence, navigate to the Gateway Evidence Review section of the QA link. You'll then be able to see any outstanding requirements that the education institution needs to upload evidence to, and then the Gateways 1, 2, and 3 awaiting approval. To open the gateway, select the education institution's name. This will open a pop-up window of all the evidence for Gateway 3. To review evidence, simply select the QA reference number or the drop-down menu and select View. This will again open up another pop-up page where you'll see the description of the standard and record, which education institution, the evidence, and narrative to support the requirement as well. To open the evidence, select on the evidence, and you'll then see the evidence contained within. Simply select a document to export and download it. Once the evidence has been reviewed and the narrative, the visitor can then add comments and a status selected. Review of the standards is by exception only. As such, if a standard should be approved, no comment is required. For Gateway 1 and 2, the status of each requirement can either be more information required or approved. However, for Gateway 3, instead of approved, it's reviewed, as the IDPAR is used at Gateway 3 stage to request further information prior to the visit. As such, Gateway 3 should not be returned for more information. Once the status has been set, you can then submit that, and it will take you back to the home page of all the evidence, and the status reason will have changed. Each requirement must be reviewed individually and the status set. Once all of the evidence has been reviewed and all of the status reasons have been set, you then need to exit the gateway and go back into the request. Simply open the request by selecting the QA reference number and scroll to the gateway section. Once you've reviewed all the evidence, it will identify which stage the gateway review is at. As such, if Gateway 1 has not yet been approved, it will say Gateway 1 here, and the status will either be approved, more information required, or rejected. However, for Gateway 3, the status reasons are proceed to visit desktop review, More information required, proceed to visit desktop review, or rejected. Rejected should only be selected here if the visit will not proceed. Selecting either proceed to visit desktop review or more information required, proceed to visit desktop review allows the visit to take place. A warning message will pop up. Select OK. You then need to scroll down to the bottom and select Submit. The Gateway 3 status will now have changed to proceed to visit desktop review, and at this stage the IDPAR will be completed to request further information prior to the visit. Okay, so for Gateway 3, the proceed to visit or desktop review, that isn't approving Gateway 3 because obviously Gateway 3 isn't approved, and that's what the purpose of the visit is for, which is why the statuses are different for Gateway 3 that when compared to Gateway 1 and Gateway 2. So we saw a pop-up there of all of the evidence and these statuses that have been set. You will only be able to action the gateway, and by that I mean approving, returning for more information, or rejecting, if all of the statuses have been set, and a pop-up and a warning message will appear if that's not been done. So it's quite a good reminder in case you've missed any as well. So that's basically the how to review the gateways. And as I've said, it's exactly the same for Gateway 1 and 2, and you'll see all of the evidence pop up, and you'll need to go into each of the requirements. Although when you open the gateway, it doesn't show what the details of the requirement. When you click inside of the requirement, it will display that information. Okay, so we're going to move on to the program approval reports, and first we're going to look at downloading the report templates. So as Ian mentioned earlier, for now these will be available to download on the Mott MacDonald website, and this will also be linked to on the NMC's website as well. And what we'll do is once those are ready, we will release guidance on how to download those and where to find them. And also, like we've sort of touched on before, although you might see a templates page on the menu bar of the QA link, they are not the most up-to-date versions and they shouldn't be used. But that functionality, where those versions are available on the QA link, it should be available at phase 2 of the development. Okay, so there's a few new bits on completing the program approval report templates. And we've received quite a bit of feedback that it's a positive thing that the report templates are now a Word version and that they can be taken offline and edited and sort of track changes and comments added. And so I think that's been seen as a real positive. However, because they are Word versions, there are a few additional tasks that need to take place in order to complete them. So obviously, because they're templates that are downloaded from the Mott MacDonald website, there is no pre-population of the program approval report. So that means that that first page, which has the details of the event, is going to be blank and that needs to be populated. So this information can be found on the requests page on the QA link. And this is just a sort of a screenshot of what you see. So you'll be able to see the education institution, the visit date, who the QA visitors are, and then details of the program as well. You'll be able to sort of click into that and see more details. And those will need to manually be added to the template. Both of these parts to populating the template should be done at the IDPAR stage, because you can then use that information in that report to go through to the final program approval report as well. So you will only need to do it once. So the other element to the program approval report templates is adding the practice learning partners, which Ian has touched on. And in the requests page as well, in the request specific to the request you're allocated to, if you click into that and scroll down, there's a practice learning and employer partners section, and it will show the program name, which if you select, it will open another pop-up which will look like this, and it will list the practice learning partners and, where applicable, the employer partners. And all you need to do is press download on either of those, and it will download everything into an Excel document. And then you'll just need to copy the column where the account name is, and as Ian stated, that is just the name of the PLP or the employing partner, and copy those and paste them into the Word document. So they're the two sort of new elements on completing the program approval reports, and that is because they aren't pre-populated. But like I've said, I think everyone's quite positive about them being in Word templates. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the specific parts of the program approval report. So that's the IDPAR, which is the initial draft program approval report, and then the final program approval report, the FPAR. So the differences here is that whilst the report is in progress, it needs to be sort of shared offline via email. So I'm going to sort of talk you through this. So on the timescale, so pre-visit for the IDPAR, both the lay visitor and the registrant visitor need to access the template from the Mott MacDonald website and download that. They can then save that locally, and they'll complete the IDPAR in the Word template offline. The registrant visitor will update the program approval report template with those elements that we've just discussed. So that's the practice learning partners and employer partners, and also the front page where it's got all the visit details. The lay visitor will then email their version of the IDPAR to the registrant visitor, who will then incorporate this into their own. They will then email the combined IDPAR back to the lay visitor. The lay visitor will then have the opportunity to review that and provide feedback, and this should be done via track changes and adding comments and using the sort of functionalities that having it in Word offers. And then this should be emailed back to the registrant visitor to review the feedback and make updates as required. And this can happen as much as it needs to. It's obviously offline via email, and you can send as many emails as you need until there's sort of an agreed final initial draft program approval report that can be sent to the education institution. The timeframes will stay the same, so 2 weeks prior to the visit, that sort of agreed program approval report needs to be submitted on the QA link by the registrant visitor, and that's a video that we'll see in just a second on how to do that. This will then be received by the education institution on the QA link, who'll then be able to respond to it. And you'll see the response on the QA link online. And then what you'll need to do is that version of the IDPAR that was submitted to the education institution, that's now, as soon as that's sort of submitted to the education institution, that's now the template for the final program approval report. So any changes that are going to be made based on the education institution's response, that version of the program approval report should be updated, and that should be the version used going forward to create the final program approval report as well. And that's both for the registrant and lay visitor as well. So the template from Mott MacDonald website only is downloaded once, and that's at the beginning of the IDPAR process. So now we're going to watch a video about how the registrant visitor uploads the IDPAR to the education institution and how to see their response as well. Once the initial draft program approval report has been agreed between the registrant and lay visitor offline, the registrant visitor will need to submit the report on the QA link to the education institution. To do this, navigate to the Program Approval Report section of the QA link and select the name for the record. This will then open a pop-up page where the registrant visitor will be able to add some comments. They will then be able to select Yes to submit to Education Institution. This will automatically pre-populate Submit to Lay Visitor as No. This does not need to be done on the QA link, as this has already been agreed offline by the lay visitor. Open up the record where the Programme Approval Report will be uploaded to and select Add Files. Choose the Programme Approval Report and then click Add Files and Submit. Select Submit. The IDAPAR record will now be in the read-only section for both the registrant visitor and the lay visitor, and the status reason will be EI-IDAPAR. Once the education institution has responded to the IDAPAR, the status reason will change to Reg Ready for Gateway 4. To see the response from the education institution, select the name to open the record, open the documents, and you'll see that a new version has been added. This will contain the review by the education institution. This can then be incorporated into the final Programme Approval Report in preparation for the visit and following the visit. The IDAPAR that has been submitted to the education institution should be used to create the final Programme Approval Report. Okay, so we're going to move on to the final Programme Approval Report process now, and I'll just talk through this flow diagram briefly, but like we've sort of stated in that video, the registrant and lay visitor should create the final Programme Approval Report using the Word version of the IDAPAR that was submitted to the education institution. Realistically, both the registrant and lay visitor will already have that copy, as it will have been agreed via email, but if you don't, you can simply access that on the QA link in the way that we've just shown and download it to your local drive. So following the visit, both the registrant visitor and the lay visitor will complete the final Programme Approval Report. 2 working days after the visit, the lay visitor will email their version of the final Programme Approval Report to the registrant visitor to combine the reports. And the registrant visitor will then email the combined version to the lay visitor. The lay visitor can then again provide feedback via track changes and comments and return via email to the registrant visitor to review and incorporate any changes. Obviously, this can happen as many times as need be. And once the final report sort of been in an agreed state, the registrant visitor should email this version to the Mott MacDonald professional team. So this process still all takes place offline. And obviously that's still at the 7 working days post-visit. So the timescales are the same as they currently are. The Mott MacDonald professional team will then undertake a review of the report that's been submitted and respond via email. If changes are required, it will be emailed back to the visitor, who will then update the Word version of the final Programme Approval Report and again email it back to the Mott MacDonald professional team. Once the review has been completed and the final Programme Approval Report is in a complete state, the Mott MacDonald professional team will give their approval that this report can be added to the QA link and submitted to the professional team on the QA link. So we're going to watch a video about how to add the final Programme Approval Report to the QA link and send it on to the Mott MacDonald professional team online. Once the final Programme Approval Report has been agreed between the lay visitor and registrant visitor, and the registrant visitor has submitted the report to the Mott MacDonald professional team via email, The report will then need to be submitted online. In order to do this, the lay visitor must first submit the record for the final programme approval report. To do this, select the name. This will open a pop-up page where you'll then be able to add a record, comment, and select Yes to submit to registrant visitor. At this stage, no document needs to be added. However, if the lay visitor has the agreed report that has been reviewed by the Mott MacDonald professional team, they can add it at this stage. Select Submit. The record will now go into the read-only section of the programme approval report page for the lay visitor. The record will now be with the registrant visitor in the Action Required section. Open the record and put in a comment for the registrant visitor. Select Yes to submit to service provider and select No to submit to lay visitor. This will automatically be pre-populated. Attach a document. Select Submit. This report will now go to the Mott MacDonald professional team. It will now fall into the read-only section for the registrant visitor and the lay visitor, and the status reason will be Tech proposed. So the key difference here between the IDAPAR and the FPAR is that the final programme approval report originates with the lay visitor. So in order for the registrant visitor to submit it to the Mott MacDonald professional team, the lay visitor needs to submit the record which holds the programme approval report to the registrant visitor to enable them to submit to the professional team. But obviously that report that's been submitted will have been reviewed and agreed between the registrant and lay visitor offline, and Mott MacDonald will already have done their review as well. So this is basically just the online process of doing that. Okay, so if conditions have been identified at the visit, the report will obviously need to be updated with the evidence to support those conditions. So there's 2 videos associated with this part of the process, and that's one about using the ad hoc request functionality and the other about uploading that programme approval report on the QA link. So to request the evidence to support the conditions, this is done through the ad hoc request functionality, and this must be done by the registrant visitor. Now this can be done as soon as the visit has taken place, so there's no like time frame around this, but it should just be done as soon as possible following the visit. The video will show us how to do that, and this is exactly the same process for requesting the education institution to upload an agenda for the visit or the minutes following the visit as well. So as Ian stated, it must be initiated by the visitor. The education institution cannot simply upload documents to the ad hoc evidence request. It has to be in response to something. So we'll go through that video. Once the final programme approval report has been submitted on the QA link to the Mott MacDonald professional team, they will then, if there is conditions, they will then return it on the QA link to the registrant visitor. This document should then be downloaded and saved locally and updated against the conditions. Once it's been updated, this version of the report should be emailed to the Mott MacDonald professional team, who will then review it offline. If amendments are required, it will be returned via email. The changes should be made offline, and again, it should be returned via email to the Mott MacDonald professional team. Once it's in a final state, the Mott MacDonald professional team will give the go-ahead for this to be uploaded to the final uploaded to the QA link online. So we're going to go through a couple of videos now, which will cover the sort of QA link processes here. So the first one's about the ad hoc request. If conditions have been identified at the visit, the registrant visitor will need to open up a request to allow the education institution to upload evidence against these conditions. To do this, navigate to the request and scroll down to the ad hoc evidence section. Click on Add Ad hoc Evidence Request. This will create a pop-up where you'll be able to seek the information required. So just to pause there, if you were requesting the meeting minutes or the agenda, you'd simply put that in this comments box here, but this just shows it for the conditions. The status will be pre-populated to awaiting submission. This will then allow the education institution to upload the relevant documents required. Select Submit. This ad hoc evidence request will now fall into the read-only section until the education institution has responded. Now that the education institution has responded to the ad hoc request, this now falls into action required. To see the evidence, click on the reference. This will then show the narrative provided by the education institution and any evidence that they have uploaded. This can be returned to the education institution if more information is required. Simply update the ad hoc request information box and change the status to awaiting submission. This evidence and supporting narrative can now be used in the Word version of the final program approval report to update the conditions. Okay, so the next video is about uploading that final program approval report that's had the conditions updated. The registrant visitor should use the final program approval report that has been returned by the Mott MacDonald professional team to update against the conditions. To find this report, enter the request and scroll to the bottom of the page where the program approval reports can be seen. This report will be in the Actions Required section. Scroll down to the bottom into the documents. This report can then be downloaded and worked off offline. Once the conditions have been updated, this report should be emailed to the Mott MacDonald professional team for review prior to being re-uploaded onto the QA link. Once the Mott MacDonald professional team have approved that the report can be uploaded, simply update the registrant visitor comments, confirm that the comments have been updated, and upload the agreed program approval report with the conditions updated. Select Add File and then Submit. Selecting Submit again will submit the program approval report back to the Mott MacDonald professional team. This now falls in the read-only section. Okay, so that's the updating the final program approval report with the conditions. Just a bit more on the program approval report. So I think because everything's done offline, it's important that there's some consistency. So when emailing reports, always copy in the nmc@mottmac.com email and the professional team member that is supporting the visit. This is so that we've got all of the versions that have been shared, and so that we can save these. And also, because everything is offline, we won't be able to directly relate it to a request that's on the QA link. So it's important that the the program approval reports are named in a useful way. So we've agreed a naming convention for the word reports, and that is that it's the education institution name, the program, event type, the PAR, the stage, and the date of sending. So that sounds like a lot, but for example, you've got the University of Bolton, which is the education institution, the program, which is Skiffin in this example. So I've put here that use shortened words where appropriate, so obviously don't spell Skiffin out. The event type, modification, that might be an approval or an endorsement. You could shorten this to mod if need be. The PAR, and by that I just mean whether it's the IDPAR or the FPAR, or whether it's the FPAR with conditions. The stage, so if it's the IDPAR and it's been submitted to the education institution, it'd be EI. If it was the lay visitors version of the IDPAR, it'd be IDPAR_LV or RV, whatever, just to make it sort of clear whose report it is, and then the date of sending, so the date of sending in the email. So it is quite long, but I think it's important that it's clear which program approval report it is. There's a couple of processes that will be managed offline, and we've touched on some of these already. So the satellite site and new placement for providers, that information is not included in the request. So you'll be notified about that via email, because obviously that will have an impact on the duration of the visit. The scheduling process will continue to take place offline as it currently does. Expenses, you will see that there is an expenses tab in the QA link. This shouldn't be used, so please continue to do the expenses as currently done. And also the IDPAR for early September events, that needs to take place offline as well. So visitors will be contacted individually for those events in September, and you'll be emailed a template as well to complete for the IDPAR. So just going to move on to a bit about support and guidance. So IT support, the NMC are going to have a dedicated help desk to contact regarding the QA link. And what we've done in the little table on the right is the type of questions and where to direct those. So Mark McDonald will still have their usual help desk, and any questions relating to the visit or the standards or the QA process can still come to the Mark McDonald team or the professional team member who's on call. But questions about the QA link, so like logging into the QA link or the QA link process, if you're not sure what to do next on the QA link, or you're unable to see something you're expecting to see, like a program approval report or a gateway, they should all be directed to the NMC help desk, which we'll share details of later. And then in regards to the training materials, the user guides will be available on our website in due course, as well as all of the videos that we've shown today, and the recording of the webinar will be available shortly. So I think I might have seen some questions coming in, but the individual videos that have been shown in this PowerPoint, they will be added onto our website, so you can see those, because I know they might be a bit small on here. All of the flow diagrams as well, this PowerPoint pack and the recording as well will all be uploaded. So we're trying to provide as much information in different formats to be as helpful as possible to support during the transition. Next steps. So as a reminder, you'll only be able to access the QA link from the 17th of August onwards. So there will be a slight gap between when the QA Hub shuts down and the QA link is live. The user guides and training materials will be made available on our website, and we've got a dedicated page just for the QA link, which will be available, where all the information will be stored. I have previously mentioned a little bit about phase 2 of the development, and that's of the NMC's QA link, and that's currently estimated for completion in March 2021. And also we're going to make sure we keep you up to date throughout the transition to the new QA link, and we'll issue regular comms when necessary. So for any further information we get we will share this with you. And yes, that brings us to the questions. So I believe people have been submitting these into the chat functionality. So if you haven't, please do pop those in now, and myself and Ian will try and answer those whilst Helen is firing them at us.
Okay, I shall make a start then at reading through the questions for you. So the first one, is it just current EE roles you need to declare? So that's from Nikki. So I think
yes. So in terms of conflict of interest, obviously it's any current external examiner roles, but it's also the conflict of interest period we use is the previous 3 years. So if you've been an external examiner at an organisation which has your tenure has completed within the previous 3 years, then that would be considered as a conflict of interest. And that's the same for if you've worked at an AEI but have left within the last 3 years, then that would also be considered as a conflict of interest. So if you use the 3-year period to consider any potential conflict of interest when you complete your profile, then that would be the time period we would look for. But obviously, if you've got any other roles that you undertake where you're not sure whether it constitutes a conflict of interest, then send an email through to Mott MacDonald and we'll respond. I think at the previous webinar we had a question around from a colleague who works at an AEI that's part of the Pan London Practice Learning Group, for example. That wouldn't be considered as a conflict of interest. But if somebody else asked if they had been an external expert or external advisor for a programme at a particular institution, and whether that would be a conflict, that would be a conflict if it had occurred within the last 3 years. So if you're unclear, drop us an email and we'll be able to let you know.
Thank you, Ian. So yeah, the next question was, is there a time limit regarding where you've worked previously for it to become a conflict of interest? So it's a 3-year rule that you just stated. So the next question, is the email address different to the one assigned to us as visitors by Mott MacDonald?
So no, so the email address that is associated to the QA Hub will be used to share with you the invitation to the QA link, which you will then, I think was shown in the video on editing your profile. You can then change if you'd like to use a different email address, but for the purposes of the transition, it will be the email address that we have recorded for you that will be used.
Thank you. Next question, are these videos available online for repeat viewings? Yes, they will be. Will a briefing pack still be emailed to visitors?
Yes, there's no functionality in the Hub link for that.
Next question, when will the templates be available? Myself and a colleague have a Gateway 4 virtual visit on the 11th of September.
So we're planning to get those available as soon as possible. They are in their final stages. We're just waiting for a final formatting check, and they'll be available as soon as possible. We're hoping to get that done by the end of this week. What I do know, though, for a visit that's happening on the 11th of September, the professional team, if they haven't done already, should be communicating with visitors who they're supporting for any visits in the first 3 weeks of September around completion of the IDPAR, because obviously you're starting the process now and obviously we're transferring across to the link. So if you haven't had already, you should be receiving some bespoke communication with regards to that, and may well have already been sent a template. But the set of templates will be available within the next week, hopefully by the end of this week. But Holly, that depends on when obviously the QA link pages on our web pages are going to be up and live. Do we know when that's happening?
I think it will all start taking place towards the end of the week as well, and early next week.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So next question, is there still a word limit in each section of the IDPAR?
So because the IDPAR is coming offline and it's in a Word document, there is no word limit in any of the sections within the Programme Approval Report. However, I would reiterate that what's added to the Programme Approval Report should be a concise summary in each section. So it shouldn't be pages and pages of text per section. So there's no word limit, in short.
Is there anything you want to add to that, Ian?
No, I was going to say, I mean, Holly said it already. I was going to say, whilst there's no word limit, we would obviously look for, when you're writing an evaluative summary in relation to the requirements that need that, we would, you know, the requirement is that is as brief but as comprehensive as you can possibly make it. It's an advantage in some respects to not have a word limit, because I do know in the hub there's obviously a character limit which includes spaces and punctuation, which has been an issue in the past. That obviously doesn't apply in a Word template, but we don't want pages and pages, because the report needs to, the NMC want the report, the final reports to be sufficient enough to demonstrate and robust enough to demonstrate that the requirements are met, and that that doesn't necessarily get demonstrated in 3 pages of text. It could, when it could be in a shortened version. So no word limit, but maintain as concise and clear narrative as you possibly can.
Okay, thank you. And then next question, what will happen with endorsements?
So traditionally, the endorsements have primarily been dealt with outside of the hub because they weren't built into the hub. But within the QA link, an endorsement will follow exactly the same process as an approval or a major modification. So it will all be housed within the link. And in the set of template reports that we're providing on the website, there will be template endorsement reports.
Okay, thank you. And then next question, I'm a registrant visitor but assigned as a lay visitor for an RTP approval. Do I need another profile for this event?
No, you don't. So in the transition, we have identified where a registrant visitor has a lay visitor account on the QA hub, and the QA link has the functionality to have multiple registrant visitors that are assigned to a visit. So we've identified those accounts that aren't technically lay visitor accounts, and we've put measures in place to ensure they are transitioned as the registrant account. So no.
Okay, and that's the end of the questions that we had.
Okay, so if we can just leave the opportunity, does anybody else have any last questions that they want to put in the chat at this point? We do appreciate that there's been an awful lot of information that we've gone through, so it might be a little bit mind-blowing at the moment, which is why we're going to ensure, obviously, that the videos and the webinar and the other resources are going to be available for access as soon as possible. And we will obviously, because we're very much in the countdown to the 17th of August now, we will make sure that you are aware of the details for being able to contact the NMC support in relation to QA Link. So we will provide that information to you as soon as possible, so you know where to direct queries with regards to the QA Link. There's just a question coming about AAI training dates. The AAI training dates are being undertaken by the NMC. They have already undertaken one, and there is a further AAI training date on Monday, Monday the 10th of August. So this coming Monday, if you would need to register for that. There was a link to be able to register in the recent letter that was sent out by the NMC to AAIs earlier this week. But if you haven't got access to that and you need a link to be able to access an AAI training date, then if you send an email to the QA team at the NMC, they should be able to sort that out for you. Okay, thank you very much for the comments that are coming in, thanking us for the session. We hope that that's been really useful to you. It just remains me to thank you for attending today's webinar, and to thank you again, as I did previously, for your continued support in the implementation of the NMC QA framework, and particularly during these challenging times. So I think that concludes proceedings for today. So thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe and well, and I'm sure we'll all be in contact soon.